Okay, we're going to be covering Offer Evaluator today. A bit of a little review for some of you, but I think there's always room for improving your business, and we're going to talk about some of the key things to consider if you are representing a buyer and you're trying to negotiate with a seller, especially during this difficult time that we're in. Good news though, if you guys didn't hear, on the weekend we did get the opportunity to show one person a home at a time or meet with an inspector at a property to keep the real estate humming along as we get through this difficult time. But make sure that you read the modifications to the stay-at-home order. And I did post on our Facebook group, but I know a lot of you are not on Facebook, but there were revisions to the order. And we already had our first almost complaint with one of our brokers who's also a photographer, putting it out on Facebook that he's trying to be creative. And so I already had Windermere that said, hey, Rochelle, in the spirit of the order, let's make sure that we are following the rules here. So we are kind of policing each other at this venture, but I don't want to have this change. This is definitely just an opening that we have to kind of get through this difficult time. So make sure you follow the bullet points. In-person activities must be by appointment only. Make sure even on those vacant homes that you're making appointments with the listing agent, no more than 2 people at a time, and that we're keeping our distance even with the people we're showing, that we're keeping our 6 feet apart at all times. We can do the keys, we can do the walkthrough of the pending transaction, we can do appraisals, we can do inspection. Again, it all has to fall within just 2 people at the house at a time. That's including you and one other person, or you and an appraiser, or you and an inspector. So make sure you review and you've looked at this modification. It just was sent out to you by email about 5-10 minutes ago. So check your inbox for the modifications. Next slide. Tonight we're going to cover the phases of negotiation, which is the buyer's purchase power and the options established. I'm going to have Shannon show an example on the screen here of one that we did about a year ago. But you want to consider about the preparation that you're doing with your buyer, making sure that they're prepared to offer, that you presented the offer to the listing broker in the kind of the right manner, and that we consider bargaining, countering, redrafting, backup, and then discuss how we close the deal or how we get that deal under contract or mutual. Next slide. So part of that comes into looking at an offer. And many of you, I was going to pull up one, but I know how competitive it is right now for this particular property. I would have loved to have showed you one of Lacey's listings. She's already getting offers on it, but it's still so fresh. I don't want to jeopardize her positioning with maybe some of you on the call. But so I pulled up one that we did, that I personally wrote. Shannon and I worked on this one together. It's for a very close friend of ours. I've sold their parents a home, and then the kids were buying last year. And you want to really keep it simple. I see it too many of the brokers writing these long paragraphs of stuff when they send over their offer. You do want to include attachments. You don't want to just send over or forward the link of the offer from Authentisign. Some of the brokerages are actually going away from Authentisign. They're using their own internal systems, so I don't want them to be uncomfortable when they receive your offer. But an offer should be sent over to the listing agent and to the listing firm. Both should be done. And so I usually CC the firm, and then I usually, in my subject line, I like to include the part of the address, because sometimes those systems that they're using sync with the address. So I just wrote excellent offer or amazing offer, or whatever descriptive thing you want to use, full price offer, whatever you want to use to describe the offer. And then I put part of the address. That way it syncs with some of their programs. Then this one had a co-list on it. So Vicki and Kathy, thanks for your quick response tonight. I did call the listing agent and got the gist of what they were doing. Attaches our offer on the lovely 209th Street house, as well as a letter out our clients would like you to submit to the seller. We are really hoping we can get this house for the odds. We've been searching and submitting offers for a while now together and have had a couple of heartbreaks. Our clients, they were called the Odd Family, that was their last name, are fully underwritten and pre-approved through our preferred lender. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So I put Christy's information on there. In the event you receive other offers, or if our offer isn't outright accepted, please give us an opportunity to revise or make this transaction work. Our team is really easy to work with. We have an excellent transaction coordinator, and between all of us, we don't miss a thing. Happy face. So if you need some good words, or you want to, this has served us very well. You're welcome to take some of this. But it's also nice because it also gives that listing agent the name and the phone number and the contact information, because we always like to have our lender contact the listing agent. And it's a way for them to kind of connect the dots, like, oh, that's right, Rochelle gave me Christy's contact information or Sam's contact information, or whatever lender you're using. Then we attach the pre-approval letter. There are different pre-approval letters that you should consider if you're a listing agent. One that's underwritten or has collected all of the information. This one's only requiring the appraisal, title, and then the fully executed purchase and sale. Everything else has been reviewed with the automated underwriting system. I'll kind of go through some keywords here in a minute, but this is an example of a pre-approval letter that's underwritten. There is a difference between just pre-approved, pre-qualified, and then an underwritten approval, which is what we have here in front of us. And then we have the offer as written. So you want to make sure everything is filled in. I like to make sure that even boxes are checked, or that the timelines are filled in. It's just one of those nice things, because you don't want somebody slipping a date or a timeline in. There has been some of that that's gone on when they print out. And then this is a sample of what the odds put together. We had to offer on several homes. When they were looking, they were in a very tough price point. And so they just created their own little cute offer summary. He was kind of explained what his job was, what her job is. Baby Odd, 27 weeks old, loves being tiny and making mom sick. Some of the reasons why the house is perfect for them. And they kind of listed it out. I thought it was pretty simple and kind of cute on how they put that together. Meet the Odd Squad. And it wasn't, really fancy. This we'll talk about in a minute as well. But here's a sample love letter, if you will, from our clients. Next slide. The lender involvement. I told you we'd talk about that. There is a difference between a pre-qual versus what they call an AUS approval, automated underwriting system approval. Many lenders are putting their clients through that system, and they're getting an automated yes, but then they're finding out that they're not underwritten. So pre-qual is before they've checked their credit maybe, but they haven't collected the information, the W-2s, the bank statements, the tax returns, those types of things. And an automated underwriting or an underwritten approval is going to look at more than just the credit score. So you want to look at that pre-approval letter, especially if you're a listing agent, and make sure that they've gone through the proper steps. And if you're trying to weigh one against another, there's a difference between a pre-qual versus an automated underwriting approval. There are pros and cons to financing types. Don't kid yourself. Although people say, oh, an FHA or a VA is no different than a conventional, they come with different types of strings. A VA, for example, will have a round robin appraiser that comes out. So the lender doesn't have the option to go through their local appraisal management company. They have to use the one that's the government assigns, and a VA appraiser is assigned. We've tried to clean house, meaning I've tried to tell the lenders, that especially at the VA, when we've had a couple of bad VA appraisers, there still are bad appraisers out there that have not appraised. So unfortunately, with VA, you get who you get. And you can ask for a reassignment. There are ways to navigate the VA, because there is some challenges there with getting things to go. But just because VA or conventional financing, you're going to have a different process and different fees associated with FHA VA versus a conventional financing for the seller. So make sure you're aware of the differences between conventional FHA and VA, and understand how to explain that to your seller or your buyers when they're going up and putting an offer in. If you are competing, which a lot of people have been competing, there's a way to win with VA, even if you are up against conventional financing. Realize that it's an uphill battle. Sometimes you'll run into designated brokers like myself who just got done with a very, very bad VA appraiser, and you'll have to kind of step into it and tell them that your client does have money. They're not just a zero down financing, although they're going to be using their VA eligibility. Maybe you want to show strength with a 22 AD and showing that your client, the VA buyer, has the additional down in case the appraiser does not appraise it at the value. That would show strength and knowledge in your offer if you know how to utilize and employ a 22 AD when you initially offer utilizing a VA, and maybe you're going up against multiple offers that may not be VA, they may be conventional. And you may be dealing with a listing agent who is not as experienced or knows their forms. And that might be able to challenge their thought process a bit more. You also should suggest to your buyers, if you're wanting to win the offer process, that the lender contact the listing broker. I do that with every single transaction. Is I have my lender, whoever it is, even if it's not Christy or if it's not Sam or somebody that I use a lot, if it's, say, their Home Street Bank lender or their Wells Fargo lender or some other lender of their choosing, I still make that first contact with the lender, and I let the lender know that I'm working with a mutual client, and that once I submit the offer, I will let them know to make that phone call to that listing broker. Even if they have to leave a message to let that listing broker know that they're on track, that they have supplied an updated pre-approval letter, that is what I have my lender or their lender set up to do, because it really bodes well. I tested this concept. Out of 20 offers, only 5 lenders called me directly. So if you're wanting to stand out, that might be a good strategy for you to win your offer or get that lender to kind of join the team, if you will, and make that first contact to that listing broker to show that they're credit worthy and that they have done the necessary steps to be competitive. You also want to know from your buyer, how much do they need for closing cost? How and how do we structure that? You know, if they're up against multiple offers, sometimes it's difficult to get the seller to pay the closing cost or to show that they're serious if they need closing costs wrapped into the purchase price. So you got to know that up front. When you're on the phone with the lender, an easy thing to do would just be to ask the lender that question. You know, we have a mutual client, Christy, could you tell me how their reserves are? Do they need the closing costs, or do they have enough to cover the closing costs on their own? We're going to be in a competitive situation. And let that lender tell you how to structure their offer. If they say that they need the closing costs paid for by the seller, then you ask them exactly how much to the penny, because it's a lot easier to negotiate that way than to put a percentage of, say, 3% into the 22A page 2, and then have the listing agent go, did you even talk with your lender? I mean, it really begs the question whether you have connected or if they're still so early on in the process. So really dig into it. If it's a percentage, counter them, you know, and counter them with the exact amount. That would be a way to handle that negotiation on the closing costs. How long does the lender need to close? If the lender has collected a lot of information and all they have to do is order an appraisal, oftentimes they can close quick, and they can often be as competitive as cash. Cash still can close within a week. Lenders do need about 2 weeks to close if they've collected everything that they need. But don't put the lender on the line, especially in today's day where we have some challenges with getting a hold of employers. Closing quick is a very, very good strategy, though, when lenders are stretched like they are. As soon as they collect documentation and they've locked the rate, they can close quick if you're working with somebody who is good and knows how to get things done. If they are in that situation where they maybe have lost out, or you're trying to put a deal back together where we know that the appraisal won't be a problem and we just have to get an appraiser out there, there can be rush fees paid by the lender where the buyer can contribute to that. They, in essence, pay more for the appraisal, and they can close quickly and potentially waive certain timelines or cut some timelines down when it comes to financing. So consider those things, that they all play into the negotiation when it comes to looking at your offer versus another. Some other things you want to consider doing before you start putting your offer together. And if you have not done this, maybe you need to retool and think about it, back up the bus a bit, and start getting this information for the buyer, so that the buyer understands that you are representing them and you have access to this information that will help them structure their offer. So if you have not gathered this information, you're in a multiple offer situation, get the title report ahead of time. Most of the time I'm seeing listing agents asking us to use a specific title company, First American Title, please use Tycor, please use First American, please use CW, please use whatever they are ordering or asking us to order in the supplements or in the agent only remarks. Do one more step and ask them to send you over the full title report, or better yet, call the title company yourself and ask them to send the full title report. If the listing agent has ordered preliminary title and has that listing on the market, there's no reason why they cannot send you over that title report. Ask for it. That way the buyer can then decide whether they want to waive their title review contingency, or if they're okay moving forward, or we have the seller's name spelled correctly on the offer. I've seen a lot of offers come through where we've had to do amendments or addenda, which becomes challenging, especially when there's multiple offers coming in. We want to make sure that that title report clearly shows who the seller is and how their names are spelled and how they're taking title. And that way we can make sure that our offer is written appropriately. If there's a resale certificate, if you're dealing with a condominium, most of the listing agents who are doing a good job with their condo sellers, they've ordered the resale certificate, and it helps you in minimizing or potentially waiving the resale certificate review contingency if they've ordered that resale certificate and if it's available to the buyer. You may need to have them scan the documents or provide them to you so you can come and look at it. Or maybe you amend the offer so that you're minimizing how much time that you have on the resale certificate to review. But you do want to get that in your hands if it's available. Sometimes they'll attach it to the supplements. Other times they'll say it's available upon request. That resale certificate will tell you about the reserves. It will tell you a lot about the condominium project so that your buyer can make a good decision on what they offer. Seller's disclosures. Most of the listings I'm seeing right now are uploading those Form 17s or other disclosures such as septic or 22K or 22J. Get those from the seller. That will also prevent you from having a counteroffer if you can button up your offer a bit more. I also ask for anything in the supplements when I'm calling that listing agent, letting them know my buyer is very serious. I will reference that I've checked the disclosures, and if there's anything else that they may have received in the last little bit that they can provide to our clients, such as if it's on septic, would love to have the septic receipt or septic pumping, or anything else such as permits or anything like that, depending on work orders that were done in this period of time. If they've done an inspection, maybe they had an inspection from the last buyer that they got, something like that, would be very helpful in getting as far as preparing my buyer for an offer. Quick and dirty CMA, doing a quick CMA, there are plenty of opportunities to go on and get kind of a running, estimate. What does Redfin say that the house is priced at? What does Zillow say that the house is priced at? And then what does the house really should be priced at? A quick and dirty CMA does not take you very long. You can use my cloud CMA account for that very purpose. It's not that hard to use that and then provide that to the buyer. If you need my login and password, I'm still able to give that to you. And you can use my cloud CMA account. It's very, very helpful for quick and dirty and to make it really present well to your buyer. Establishing the price and the amount for the earnest money. Now, it really should be something that they select, even if you provided them a range of like where the numbers sit. It sits between 400 and 425. What offer do you want to offer? You still want to consider that that's their decision. Even after you've provided all the facts or the data, they still have the option of selecting what price they want to offer. I don't want you forcing them into offering this or that. It really should be their decision. And that way, if they lose the house or they don't get it, they were not the winner, they're not blaming you for that price. Again, you're just providing them with the information And I would say a good offering, if you're, say that a house has been on the market for a long time and maybe they dropped the price. I'm seeing some of those price reductions right now. And you're going in, consider that we don't want to offer 20% less than what they've just reduced the price to. Do a CMA. Now they probably got the price down to the market price. And then if you're negotiating, realize that when you look at the negotiation rate on all of the properties, let's just say Pierce County in general, I just ran that. Generally, things are selling in Pierce County for about 97 or 98% of the value of the home. So once the price gets down to the price that is the market price, there's still some negotiable room there. And if you want to have these people who are wanting to take advantage of this market adjustment or the balanced market, now is the time to do that, and tell them to offer maybe 3% off or ask for closing costs. But if you're in a multiple offer situation, you're not going to be able to ask for closing costs or ask for a reduction in price. But if you're the only one, why not try? Go ahead but 20% is unreasonable. All we're trying to do when getting them to get a price set is to come up with a price where it will get the seller to counter. If you offer them, say 20% off, and I've had a seller do this to me, you got to get them realistic and show them data and figures to show them what are the actuals. When a home is priced at a certain price, at a market price, in Pierce County, in 98003, and whatever zip code you're working with, what we're seeing is that even when the adjustment's happening, we're not seeing 10% off the price. What we are seeing is maybe perhaps a 2% or 3%. So let's offer 5% off the price and hope that they counter us at 3%. Get them realistic and set those expectations with your buyer. But if you're if you're swimming upstream and you're up against multiple offers, you can't go in like that. You're going to have to be very strategic at how you limit your contingencies and the price that you offer, and whether you offer full price or a bit more than full price, or you have to use an escalation. We'll talk about that in a minute. Love letters are still very, very common out there. The way I feel about love letters here at Best Choice Realty is if you're representing a seller, they should not be used to consider whether I use one offer or another, but I have to deliver them to you because they're considered notices between the buyer and the seller. So if a buyer is going to give me a notice or a love letter, in instance, I'm going to give that, but not put it in the same bundle. I will use it as a separate attachment, and I will provide that to the seller just as a notice that this is what the buyer supplied along with their offer. And I put a little disclaimer on there. You cannot make a decision based on the love letter, but this is just a letter that they wanted to share with you. And that's how I address love letters, but they still do help in putting a face or a name or a situation with an offer.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can a listing broker refuse to present that?
Can a listing broker use to present that? Say that one more time.
I was representing a buyer one time, and the listing broker said he was not. I wrote up basically a love letter and an email, and forwarded it to the sellers, and it was separate. It wasn't when the offer was sent or whatever. It was separate right afterwards, and he implied that he would refuse. He doesn't present offer letters or love letters.
It's unfortunate that some designated brokers don't see it like I see it, and there are occasions that happens. But I think you did the right thing by putting an email.
Okay.
But not all designated brokers feel the same way I do. I'd say about 50% do and 50% not.
So they're not legally obligated to present it to the seller.
It's debatable. It's very gray.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. To waive or not to waive, cut timelines down or remove timelines. We are not seeing, if you're in a multiple offer situation, we are seeing that you are gathering the title contingency. Don't forget to send that title report to your buyer though. If you're not going to include a 22T, in essence, you are practicing on the knowledge that you have given them or they have received a title report or preliminary title report from the seller or from the listing agent, and therefore they don't need you to include that title contingency. But if the seller or the listing agent hasn't provided the title contingency or a title report, you probably should use a 22T. It does provide for 5 days to review. You can cut that timeline down, but just realize it's another way for a buyer to easily back out. So, you need to think about that, how you structure it. If you're using an inspection contingency of Form 35 and you are going to conduct an inspection, that gives you more time to get the title report delivered to you. But just realize that is your responsibility to get that title report to your buyer, and that 22T is a reminder. Most of you don't use it, and that's fine. Just realize that that is an area of opportunity or weakness that your buyer could come back and say, hey, did my agent give me my title report? Did they gather that from the supplements, or did they get that from the listing agent? And if you didn't give it to them, you may need to kind of sharpen your tool belt, sharpen your tacks a little bit, and make sure that you are protecting your buyer from potential litigation or issues between you and your buyer. If they say, well, we got the offer, but I overpaid and I didn't have a way to review my title. And, I never was supplied my title report. Ooh, that make us look very, very weak as buyer's agents. So start to get that title report a little bit sooner than you probably have in the past. 35 inspection contingencies. There are 3 different ways to handle it from the seller's point of view. Either A, you get a pre-inspection, have your seller order an inspection, find an inspector that's well known in the community, somebody that you've seen a lot. If you don't know, I've got names of people who could come out and do an inspection for your seller. Then you could make that a parent or a supplement, especially if it's a home that is a really clean, well-run, remodeled, whatever you'd like. Attach it as a supplement, and then that might prevent other buyers from going and ordering their own inspection. We have an addendum that you would use. There is one that's in our bestchoicerealtyhomes.com in our forms that you would use for that, and that would make that inspection a supplement, and it's kind of a way to add it to the Form 17. So realize that pre-inspections in that format are basically like you're showing a potential buyer, or your seller is, here is an inspection, here is what we did, and whatever date it was, and we are attaching it as a supplement, we're making it available, and then your buyer has the right to utilize this or use it or to do their own. That's what that pre-inspection would be. Make sure you're using that addendum, though, that we have that would be in the contract. Windermere also uses one. I don't think Keller Williams has it. Coldwell Banker might have one, but I am seeing people use that right now when we're dealing with the corona, that we have that available, and that we make it easy for people to make decisions with knowledge that are done by professionals. So let's make sure we use a reputable inspector, licensed, bonded, ASHI certified, that has also the qualifications and that can provide a very clear, concise report that then becomes part of the supplements in the listing. Then we attach also the addendum that Best Choice Realty has provided that says we have supplied an inspection report, and then we may not have to have an inspection done on the home. Now, pre-inspections are another way to go about that. So if a seller or a listing agent has uploaded a 35P to their listing, then what that does is tells you before you offer, you can have a buyer's inspector, somebody that they choose, go in and meet with you. They cannot attend the inspection. They have to make their decision based on that, on the inspection or the inspector that they choose to go in and use the 35P and have their inspector go in and inspect the place. Then make the decision when they offer that they're pre-inspecting the house. So let's say, for example, that the inspector said the furnace need to be serviced and there need to be caulking on the kitchen counters, and that the roof needed a certificate from a roofer. We know that the roof is probably on its last legs in that case, so you may want to go ahead and offer a little bit less to cover a roof replacement, because it's not going to most likely get through the financing or the appraisal if the roof is not good, or if the roof has got tons of moss, it may need to be cleaned. So you may want to offer that in your offer, that the seller, we're going to pre-inspect it, meaning we're not going to ask for anything, or do a 35R or go through that whole Form 35R process, but we are going to negotiate in our offer originally on the repairs that are necessary to get it through financing. So think about that when you're doing pre-inspections, or maybe you negotiate and you do a Form 35 and you only have a one-day inspection, meaning that you don't have to change the status if we're a listing agent. We can do the inspection, and then change the status the following day. With a one-day inspection, that makes that possible. So think about that. There's some strategies around using Form 35, but a Form 35 is required. It's a required addendum. If you are waiving inspection, it is still required to have in your package. Do not exclude Form 35 from your offers. Also, if it could be a 35 feasibility, or it could be a 35 inspection. So it's a 35F or it's a Form 35. And then the Form 17, there is some reasons. There's some people that want to cross off Section W. That's fine. Just make sure anytime you cross something out in a contract, it must be initialed by all parties in order for it to be mutual. So if you have some sort of red X or red cross out on some of the contract, be sure that your buyer and your seller initial that in order to have mutual acceptance. The resale certificate is also another area that there's a right to back out. So if you're trying to tighten that down, one way to do that is to order the resale certificate right away and then provide some language in an addendum or in the 22D other that tighten down that resale certificate review or modify the purchase and sale agreement. It's in the Form 28 though, and it gives the buyer the right to terminate pretty much for any reason, given the condo resale certificate. So if you're wanting to try to keep deals together, consider all of these contingencies and make some decisions on that. Next slide, Shan. Escrow and title. Not all escrow companies and title are created alike. We've found this out very quickly just with how we handle your commission checks and wiring and making sure that they're following the rules and following the instructions that we've set, given the changes that had to occur because of the offices and how we receive commission checks and how we handle things in our offices. So not all escrow companies are made alike. Therefore, you need to be cognitive of that. And when a listing agent says, use this title company, you may want to use that escrow company so it keeps the fees low for the seller and the title can be ordered. But the escrow company, you do have a choice in who that escrow closer, meaning who handles the earnest money, who signs your people. You do have a choice in that. And that's something that's split between the seller and the buyer. The escrow fee is split half and half. And so that's an area where if you're in negotiation, you need to get more involved in who you're using for your escrow and who your actual closer is. Delivery of the earnest money amount, all of that is something to consider when you're structuring your offer to win. I would rather see larger earnest monies right now, especially when people are walking away from earnest monies. We've had people walk away, no joke, you guys, $30,000 walked away from $20,000. They were a week away from closing, walked away from $25,000. So the higher the earnest money is, depends on how much that buyer wants that property, especially with the challenges that we're experiencing. So if you're a listing agent, yes, if somebody's offering you more earnest money, that would be a stronger offer than say only a 1% earnest money check. And I hate to say it, but some of the areas in the outlying areas, $500, $1,000, we got to get away from doing those. We need to ask or counter and see if we can put more skin in the game. If they're putting up a down payment, there's no reason why there shouldn't be more earnest money put up in times like this where the market is adjusting. Closing and possession dates, make sure that you consider that when you're structuring your offer as well. When I am looking at the full picture of, say, a buyer's situation, and I know that the seller is living in the home, that might be an area of opportunity where we may not be the strongest on the price, but we certainly may be more accommodating and letting the seller live in their home during this challenging time. That would be negotiated on a 65A or 65B on possession. On the offer, if you are going to do possession other, meaning it's on a different date, you could say see attached rental agreement or see Form 65A or see Form 65B on that section. You could type that into the other section if you have a situation where it would help the situation in letting the seller or letting the buyer move in, close quick and let the buyer move in, or let the seller live there for a period of time. We're seeing those offers being written in such a way that makes a lot of sense. And I think that we have a chance of winning if we consider some good negotiation when it comes to possession. Also consider 22FM. Most of the offers I've seen written in the last week have included the 22 FM. So if you're unfamiliar with the 22 FM, pull it up tonight after the call and dust it off, read it, review it, call me, text me if you have questions about how to include it in your offer or how to structure it. But I have seen it on every single, I think just about every single offer that's come in the last week. It may probably 90% of them. So let's consider the 22 FM as maybe one of those addenda until we get through the quarantine that we have going on right now. Other considerations when you're talking about negotiating your offer or preparing your offer for your buyer, condominiums are going to have, like I said, resale certificates, and they're also going to have assessments or HOA dues that have to maybe be factored in. Make sure you understand what those assessments would be if they've gone up in the last few months. That there may be some assuming that needs to be done. And there's sewer capacity charges too, you guys, for King County specifically. Anything that's built after 1990, there may be a sewer capacity charge that the buyer or the seller has to negotiate. If you check the box or you accept an offer that says seller will prepay in full at closing, that means the seller will be taking care of the sewer capacity. If the buyer assumes, that means the buyer would be assuming the sewer capacity. So a simple checkbox on the first page can save your client several $1,000s, or it's going to make your buyer having to factor in a few $1,000s as well. Next slide. I think I'm getting close to my time. So when you call that listing agent, you do want to do a good introduction. Your first impressions do count. Set the tone early, offset any bad rumors. There have been, unfortunately, some brokers at Best Choice Realty that have maybe they showed the home improperly. So make sure that if there's any bad rumors, if they've worked with the Best Choice Realty agent, most likely they've had a really good first impression. But if they have not had a good first impression, I got an email from Mike Connolly over at Windermere today, and he was pretty upset about one of our brokers. And we try to offset a lot of that ahead of time, but you want to set that tone early. If I was offering on a house that Mike Connolly had listed right now, I would be having to offset a bad rumor that was going on about one of the agents that showed his property. You want to present the offer calmly without personalization, overly commenting. Again, my email, as we started the call out, was very short. It was simple, talked about their credit worthiness, who they were using for their lender. I didn't want to overly personalize because I wanted my buyer to personalize for themselves. And so with that love letter, that was what I did without personalizing. Again, it's very, very simple. It comes down to logic, and I want to support my client's position and why we offered what we did. Be candid with the listing agent. Don't flatter them too much, but yet you want to build trust and rapport. You want to utilize human factors and be able to open up about feelings and motive. You'll notice that I added that into my email about how we had lost out on several other properties, and that they are credit worthy and have the ability to move forward and close this quickly. I think what really set me off today was, in a good way, Lacey, the offer we received, she put on there, and this was good. The listing agent had received an offer on probably one of multiple offers, but the Windermere agent had written in there that the buyer had lost out on other offers, and she had wanted them to lock their rate. The interest rates were fluctuating greatly, and we'd like to get a winning offer quickly so that we can lock our rate. So be candid and use human factors, or be open with your motives that will enhance trust. That sat well with me because I've spoken with many lenders today, and I know that the interest rates are fluctuating, and I like that she's in tune with that. Admit, when appropriate, the validity of the other party's argument. So if the other party had said, Rochelle, the roof is bad on this one, and we offered $5,000 less, I know to replace the roof, it's going to be about $10,000 or $12,000. Our offer is $5,000 less. Admit, I agree with you that the offer, it's a good offer. So don't present too many issues. Highlight the strong ones. Avoid deadlines or ultimatums, giving them till noon today. I mean, let's be reasonable with our offer expiration dates. Avoid using personal opinions and ultimatums. They don't bode well in the negotiation process. And I think that's a wrap. Shannon, did I cover everything?
Yeah, we've got a couple questions here, and I'm going to go through some of them. If anybody else has questions, feel free to go through the chat, or pipe in after I've gone through some of the ones that have already been asked.
Awesome.
But one of the first ones I got was, should I or should I not include an offer summary when submitting to the listing agent? And I know I personally have seen these before whenever I've listed a property where someone outlines what the offer is and say an attachment or even within the email itself.
Yes, it's kind of a catch-20, it's a kind of a mixed bag, right? Some people do it really well where it's summary and it's short. Some of them are way too long and lengthy, and you run the risk that you may have missed something or overlooked something. Like you put $5,000 on closing costs and it was 4,000. I saw that happen one time. So, you got to be careful on what you put in that offer letter, that it matches the offer. But an offer letter or an email that has those bullet points, that doesn't mean that, they're going to use that rather than look at your offer. And you don't want to bloat something up, say it's a full price offer when it's not a full price offer. So be very careful on what you're putting those bullet points. I think it's perfectly fine to put, earnest money is X. I've seen those, and that's okay. But it really is not necessary to have all those bullet points. I'd rather just have you, connect more with that listing agent, maybe reference some of the things you discussed on the phone if you can, and make it much more of a personal rather than a templated, here are the bullet points. I'm not a huge fan of some of them, but I have seen some that I really like. So be careful. I would say just use a bit more caution than you probably would, and be sure you're not copying people that are doing it way too much. I wish I had a sample to show you. There's been some that I would not do, and there's some that I would do.
Okay. I've got a couple questions. I think it just pertains to the current situation, okay, with the whole stay-at-home order and how it has not been lifted, but we've had these changes within the last 48 hours. So one of the first questions they had is, can we do pre-inspections right now?
Yes.
Okay. And then, can sellers move right now or hire movers, and how would that work?
Moving is not, some movers are moving and some are not. We're struggling right now, honestly, you guys, to find moving companies that haven't laid off their people temporarily until this has been lifted. So you're going to be hard pressed to find people to help you move right now. We have had challenges with just the pending transactions that were scheduled to close here at the end of the month, having to push those closing dates back to accommodate moving challenges. We got a great deal from a moving company, and then with the stay, for example, we can't hire that company for another 2 more weeks. So you're going to, if you haven't run into that, you be prepared. That is something that you're going to run up against. And it's going to depend on how they're interpreting that, how they're licensed, how they go in, and how they go in and understand the law. Again, we're not the moving company, so we can't be helping in that way. But you can actually, as far as I know, you can move yourself. I mean, John Ferguson is taking his boxes and has to move to his new place. I have to move down to the 3rd floor for our office, so I just went to Home Depot to get boxes. So the boxes are on the end cap, you guys. I mean, so people are figuring out how to move themselves, I think, at this point in time, to run the risk of getting themselves or their moving company in trouble. They are actually figuring out how to do this on their own. So as far as I know, U-Haul is still operating. There are other companies that are still leasing out trucks during the pandemic. But again, there's a lot of moving companies that are on kind of a freeze right now, if you will. So hopefully that answers your question.
Sure. I've got quite a few more. One other thing that we had was, are closings taking longer right now, and how should I set expectations with my seller regarding the situation? If they're wanting, say, if they're closing one of their investment properties, it's not a property that they're necessarily living in.
Yeah, I mean, the closings on average right now, in the last week, we're seeing at least a week to 2 on an extension necessary. So if you're going to take a listing, just tell your seller to be prepared that because of the financing changes that have happened in the last week, and because of the stay order with moving trucks, that we are seeing an extension needed of about 1 to 2 weeks. So be prepared for that. I would even get to the point where you might want to have that 22, the new addendum created and just have that as a supplement. Why not have that and just have that uploaded so that buyers understand that you're willing to accept that kind of additional inspection. That might be, or that additional time, you know, that extension that's needed. I haven't seen anybody do that yet, and that might be something that we take up where, you know, we put that as a supplement, the 22M.
So what would be the benefit of using the 22 FM? So how does that work in terms of computation of time?
Computation of time, if the stay order is in place, like it is right now, things get extended. So financing contingencies automatically get extended. Closing dates automatically get extended. Say, for example, the lender that we were using, they were based out of California, and that particular city where they were based out of required them to stay at home, and they could not go to the office, and they couldn't get the funding to happen. That would automatically extend that financing contingency, or that closing date would be extended due to that.
Would the 22 FM affect the timelines due for Form 17, Earnest Money, inspection, anything like that?
Yes, but now with the new order, see, we have limited, so inspection is not going to be pertinent to that because that's been lifted.
Gotcha.
But for financing, yes, and for closing dates, yes. So now that we can do inspections, it might be something you talk with your sellers about, and maybe we put that in as a supplement just to let them know. It gives the buyer comfort knowing that there is some flexibility there with the closing date.
Okay. And it looks like, Louisa, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question about rent backs. Go for it.
Sure. I have a cash buyer who's interested in a home, and the family wanted to finish up. They're having something built, and they think that'll be done at the end of May, and they wanted to rent back from her. And she was concerned. She said, well, if that happens, I'll have to go and get some sort of license or sign up as a landlord. And then when I sell the house, I'll be subject to the 1031.
No, it's a temporary, the way that 65 and 65A and B are done is a short-term rental agreement. So the thing that the seller needs to do is contact her insurance company to see if she can get insurance for just a temporary, like a vacation rental type of thing.
But then when she says, when she signs at the end, when she does, the question is, has it ever been a rental? And she said she'd have to say yes.
The 1031 exchange, that type of, you have to have lived in your home for a certain period of time. So if she's not lived in the home, there are certain precautions to take. But if that seller has been in that home for a long time, there shouldn't be a problem with her doing a short-term, like very short-term, 1 to 2 month rental agreement. That shouldn't jeopardize her ability to clear, you know, to avoid capital gains. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. She does taxes for a very large organization, so that's why she's kind of hung up on that. And I thought, well, it may be hard for me to prove her otherwise, but
I would just go back and provide a rental agreement. So if it's going to be a longer than the 30-day, then get a rental agreement that addresses that, and maybe have her draft that rental agreement so that it makes sense for her, that she has the provisions that she needs to have to make her compliant with whatever she's talking for taxes, and then counter you with that. So I would just write the offer with the rental agreement, not a 65A or 65B, and suggest that she get a rental agreement drafted.
Okay, but how can I assure her that in the end she'll be able to say, no, this has not been rented?
Is she represented by an agent, or is she a for sale by owner?
It's not the seller that's concerned, it's the buyer.
It's the buyer that's concerned.
The buyer is saying, down the road, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I'll have to answer the question affirmative that this has been rented.
Why don't you call one of the 1031 exchange companies and then have them contact her and give her that information. She's not looking at it correctly. There's exemption.
Okay. Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
it looks like Emily had a question regarding a condo situation.
Yes.
Go for it, Emily.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because like on multiple offers, if you're a listing agent for a condo can you upload the CCRs and ask people to have them reviewed and submit that as a highest and best? They're waiving the resale certificate review because
Yes.
you can?
Yeah, but you need to have language written in. So you would have to get with me, Emily, and I'll give you the language that needs to be written in, because you're in essence modifying the Form 28 contingency, right? It would need to be properly written in on a Form 34 or on the 22D other section. So I can help you with that if you get one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Very good. Anything else, Shannon?
Those are all the questions I have right now, but I think you wanted to mention some goodies if people are interested in those.
I have some goodies that will help some of you listing agents maybe set up the stage if you're in a multiple offer situation. We are expecting in some areas to have, you know, a lot of buyers. I've received 5 phone calls today with buyers who are wanting to take advantage of the market that's adjusting. They're hearing the news that Seattle was still a very hot area before this happened. And with us being able to lift, there's some good stuff coming, I think. And I think we're going to expect some multiple offers. So you might want to set up your sellers to have like a supplement. So I have a goodie. If you want to send me an email, I'll send you the goodie today. And it's just an outline of things that, you know, may help. You may upload that if the seller chooses on a supplement that will kind of keep the buyers focused that this is what the seller is requesting with their offers. If you're going to play the whole multiple offer game, let's get those, let's kind of retrain or teach the buyers agents how to write those offers so that the seller gets the upper hand. And it also might help some of you newer agents. I do have another goodie that is kind of a step-by-step process of what you should do if you represent a buyer and what you should do as you represent a seller. So if you want those, and they're pretty basic for some of you that have been in the business a long time, but might give you some step-by-steps on what you should be considering at this point in the game. So send me a quick email and I'll shoot you over those 3 documents. And those checklists are very helpful if you're new to the business and you're like, I don't know what addendum to use and what to include or what to consider. Or maybe I haven't done a vacant land purchase and sale in a long time or a commercial purchase and sale. We have some very helpful checklists that you guys can take advantage of as well. So let me know what I can do to help you. I try to provide as much value as I can, but it's difficult to get everything out to you guys when you need it. And then we are going to do a Q&A next week. Be prepared. We're going to do a Q&A on the whole COVID pandemic and some good tips on how to get some messaging out to your clients. So jump on next week's call for that. And in the meantime, have a great week. See you guys later.